people don't take enough. That's all. People are confused about what's going on. First of all, taking psychedelics has a certain measure of chicness about it. Well, everybody wants to be chic, and you can get into the club merely by saying you took it. But you don't want to lie like a dog, so the way to get into the club without paying your dues is to take some pissant amount and then run around raving about that. So when we talk about the psychedelic experience, it's not clear we're all talking about the same thing. It's sort of like talking about France, and you have the people who changed planes in the airport and the people who moved there for 30 years and learned the literature and got a job and married the locals. So the way to do psychedelics is, I believe, at higher doses than most people are comfortable with, and rarely, and with great attention to set and setting. The social use of psychedelics in the club scene or at rock and roll concerts and so forth, I mean, when I go to those kind of scenes, I just smoke pot. I don't, because I want to be part of what's going on, I want to have a good time, but you would be nuts to take a major psychedelic in that circumstance. Socially dense environments filled with light and noise are a strategy for coming down. If you took a drug you didn't like, the smartest thing to do would be to jog around the block 10 times and then chop a bunch of wood. Very similar to dancing your ass off, in other words. So the way I recommend doing psychedelics is in silent darkness and with as little input from other people as possible. I say alone. If you are experienced, if you're really confident, just alone, for crying out loud. If that gives you pause, and you must have a sitter, and let's use the word sitter, not guide. My God, nobody's guiding you anywhere. They have no more notion where you are than, we know where Judge Carter is at this point. So the sitter, and my idea of the perfect sitter is, you have a little Tibetan bell by your side, and the sitter is 3 rooms away, and if you need the sitter, you ring the bell, they stick their head in the room and say, "It's cool, lay down," and, do that. And as long as this question was brought up and so much of the lecture was somewhat high-toned, let me get into this for a minute. There are thousands of altered states. We know them: orgasm, indigestion, 2 cappuccinos. What high-toned, let me get into this for a minute. There are thousands of altered states. We know them: orgasm, indigestion, 2 cappuccinos, where tequila takes you. So endless altered states. And I'm not really interested in them more or less than any of you are. They're part of life. But what I'm interested in as an experimentalist, as a connoisseur of nature, somebody who loves fossils, butterflies, rainforests, that kind of thing, is this family of compounds called the indole hallucinogens. Indoles. And they cause hallucination. And some people say, that I'm a fetishist about this, that who cares, or that there are other things besides hallucination. Yes, I know, maybe, and of course, but the reason I'm so fascinated by hallucinations is because, to my mind, when you're hallucinating, you have an absolutely clear proof that you are not generating this material. It's not funny ideas. It's not racing thoughts. It's not insight into what your boyfriend really meant yesterday. That kind of thing we all can generate by just inspecting our own minds. But a hallucination is to be in the presence of that which previously could not be imagined. And if it previously could not be imagined, then there is no grounds for believing that you generated it out of yourself. I mean, we should each know our own inventory. You know what's in your cupboard. You know what's in your chest of drawers. For God's sake, you ought to know what's in your mind. Well, then if something comes forward and you say, that's not mine, that's not in my inventory, then you have a kind of perfect proof that this is coming from somewhere else. And then the question becomes, where? And we can set off into that. Opinions differ, and nobody has God's truth on it. A reductionist, somebody who didn't like these substances, would say, oh, well, it's just neurological chaos. It's just you've interrupted the normal functioning of good brain chemicals, and evil brain chemicals are now giving a sense of a chaos. Well, that just doesn't cut the mustard. I mean, that kind of stuff may work if you're talking to the troops, but not if you're talking to anybody who's ever been there. I know what a neurological chaos would look like. It would look like bright lights, moving patterns, colored this, something that. It would not be ruins, landscapes, machines, paintings, works of art, building plans, weapons, bits of manufactured technological detritus. These things are too coherent. They're objects in some kind of superstructure of the mind. And for me, this was the revelation. I didn't get into this business by being an airhead or a screwball. My attitude was always, if it's real, it can take the pressure. You don't have to pussyfoot around the real thing. If they're telling you, oh, you must lower your voice and avert your gaze or this and that, then you're probably in the presence of crap. Because the real thing is real. It doesn't demand that you adjust your opinion to suit it. It's real. That means it is preeminent. That means it sets the agenda. And I studied yoga. I wandered around in the East. I was fast shuffled by beady-eyed little men in dhotis. I know the whole spiritual supermarket and rigmarole. And I find nothing there to interest me on the level of, 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms in silent darkness. I mean, that's where the pedal meets the metal. That's where the rubber meets the road. And the inspiration for me to get up and talk to an audience like this simply comes from the fact that I cannot believe that this could be kept under wraps the way it has. I mean, I kidded with you earlier that they would make sex illegal if they could. Well, they can't, so it isn't. But the psychedelic experience is as central to understanding your humanness as having sex, or having a child, or having responsibilities, or having hopes and dreams. And yet it is illegal. We are somehow told we are infantilized. We're told, you can wander around within the sanctioned playpen of ordinary consciousness, and we have some intoxicants over here. If you want to mess yourself up, we've got some scotch here and some tobacco and red meat and some sugar and a little TV and so forth and so on. But these boundary dissolving hallucinogens that give you a sense of unity with your fellow man and nature are somehow forbidden. This is an outrage. It's a sign of cultural immaturity, and the fact that we tolerate it is a sign that we are living in a society as oppressed as any society in the past. To a short question, but I think it's really important. My thing is not about my opinion or what I saw in Africa or anything like that. This is, get it straight, this is about an experience, not my experience, your experience. It's about an experience which you have, like getting laid or like going to Africa. You must do the experience. Otherwise, it's just whistling past the graveyard. And we're not talking about something like being born again or meeting the flying saucers or something like that, where good works and prayer are the method. No, if you take a sufficient dose of an active compound, it will deliver itself to you on the money. If it doesn't work, take more. Nobody is in a position to dismiss this just because it didn't work for them on one or two tries. This is an art. It's an art. It's something you coax into existence. I mean, you have to learn to make love. You have to learn to speak English. Anything worth doing is an art that is acquired. This is part of our birthright, perhaps the most important part of our birthright. These substances will deliver. It is the confoundment of psychology and science generally. And that's why it's so touchy for cultural institutions. But you are not a cultural institution. You are a free and independent human being. And these things have your name written on them in big gold letters. Yes, here.